Yes, what's good? I go by the name Sun, and I'm here today to give you a track breakdown of my single Dinosaur Hunters, which is out on Artificial Music. So without further ado, let's have a little listen to the tune.
They will be here for 3 months. Here on the edge of nowhere. Hunting for dinosaurs.
Alright, so that's a little idea of what the track's sounding like. Yeah, it's quite a conceptual track for me. It's very different to the sort of tunes that I'm making typically. The track starts with this kind of like VHS sounding sort of like sequence. And the idea here is that like you've put in a VHS tape into your machine, you've hit play, and you're about to watch like a documentary about dinosaurs. The track itself started with the stabs here, which are solo sort of as they are in the track now. So that's how they sound in the track now, but it all started from this sound here like this. So a little bit different, not very punchy. The tune was completely different actually when it first started. It was kind of more around this sort of sound. It was a bit more of like a jungly break. But then the more I started to beef it up, the more I realized that layering it and stuff, it started to have that like dinosaur characteristic. Hence sort of leaning heavily into the dinosaur sort of theme for the track. So yeah, let's take a little look. So this is that original stab. It's a one-shot hit from a free rave samples pack, hit 97. I can't quite remember where it's from, but I just like the sound of it. And yeah, here's what I kind of did with it. So I added a bit of saturator, give it a little beef. We've got a compressor doing some snare side chain. We've got a frequency shifter, which is across the track. If we have a look at this, it's just subtly shifting the frequency around. So it's kind of like, it's got that, it's feeling like it's pitching up, because it is pitching up. We've got a flanger in there. All really like subtle effects here. We've got a Valhalla reverb. Very short reverb there. We've got another reverb, which, judging by the mix here, is just being automated on and off, so it gets to the end of a phrase. So it's kind of like giving it that space. We've got RC color, which is, retro, RC20, which is, what's it doing here? It's just on, but with this strange space preset. Again, just kind of like slightly changing the characteristics. We've got Gem Mod, which is a really nice plugin that kind of gives that stereo width. So it's quite mono, that just brings it a little bit wider. And there's ring modulator, which is quite fun here. The course is being modulated, and as a result, kind of that in combination with the frequency shifter doing its bits. It's also kind of like creating that interesting sound to it. Inside there as well, we've also got layered up. This is another version of the stab. The only difference here on this one is that I've got two different rifts kind of creating kind of like a different tone to that same sound. Below that, we've got this Serum preset here, which is from Rob Late. Yeah, wicked pack actually with the sounds in there from Serum. This one hasn't had a lot of processing done here. We've got a little bit of compression, but it sounds like this. So that's like in combination with the last two. It's giving it that like lower hit. It's kind of like kind of hitting a little bit lower down there. We move down to this one here, which is a Urban Dub preset. It's some percussion preset with some OTT on it. But that's the sort of one that just in the context of the stab group just adds that nice high end. It's kind of filling out that sound. So all of that is going into the stab group here, which if I turn on all of these effects as well, you can see it really brings it to life there. I won't go into it in too much detail, but all of these effects here are kind of honestly just me flicking through different presets, finding something that sounds cool, and just layering it up, and then automating different things to come on at different times. So if we, let's take this random portal, for example, if we go on the dry wet, you can see here it's just kind of automating more dry. So that's what gives this sort of like build sound. It's kind of playing into that sound there. Let's have a little look at this portal as well while we're here. Yeah, so at the end of this phrase here, it kind of automates on. So that's what's kind of giving it all these interesting characteristics. We've got some convolution reverb here, which is also automating at the end and turning off. We've got some EQ clipping. There's some sidechain compression as well. And at the end here, we've got this Saturn II, which, let's see, which is just actually, that's really nice. What's this? Dynamic transformer, which is just a preset, which is just kind of beefing it up at the end, giving it that loudness, kind of giving it a bit more of that clarity. So yeah, that's kind of the stab sound, which is exactly where the track started. And it was kind of from there, once I got to this position where I was probably not far off of what it's sounding like here, I was kind of like, okay, interesting. Like, where am I going with this track? And yeah, very quickly I was like, it sounds a bit like dinosaurs or reptilian in some way. And then, yeah, from there I started to build out the rest of the track. The other thing I did with the stabs is I had all these different layers. There's a couple more layers here that are kind of doing very similar things. But what I'm doing on these layers is just using like the enable and disable sort of feature of the MIDI here. And I was honestly just kind of listening to it in context of the track and just enabling, disabling things and making it feel quite random. I mean, it looks as though this is kind of repeated over these 216s, but there is also an element of it just being a little bit random. The same with the modulation, automation, on the group. Just wanted it to feel like it was always something fresh and new, and yeah, just like really subtle differences, but it kept it moving. All of this is also being sent to a couple of sends. We've got a reverb send here, which has got, not a reverb send, sorry. We've got a flanger send here. We've got a delay send here as well. And we've got this wide send. This is a wide send I made a little while ago, which is just literally some saturator, gem mod, making it like really wide, and just an EQ, getting rid of some of the lows. And I quite like just pumping a bit of that into something sometimes. Like if it's not quite hitting, I'll just turn up that send. That's always on my like default template, and sometimes it just gives that little extra sort of like crunch in the wide that can make a sound sort of stand out. So moving on to the drums here. These drums are quite minimal, quite punchy. I'll give you a little solo of them now. So yeah, the main kick and snare here, it's quite like minimal, punchy sort of sounds, snappy. The kick's quite like a low end kick, I think, actually, and some of the EQ here, I'm just getting rid of some of that low end from the kick. What am I doing in here? Getting rid of even more of the low end just to make it sit in the mix. And Quite like a low kick like that when it's side chaining, because it kind of gives like, especially like the bass elements, it kind of gives quite a nice like, gives that pump sound, but because it's not necessarily got that like higher punch, you kind of hear the sidechain a little bit more, I think. Maybe I'm explaining that wrong, but there's something about it that I really like, and I tend to go for sort of like the more minimal low end kicks in the sort of tunes that I'm making. We got some tops here, quite standard. Couple of like loops here. We got a think break, as always, quite heavily processed here. Again, it's just kind of things that are fitting into the mix, bit transient shaping here to bring down the sustain to make it a little bit tighter, soothe for the harshness, and yeah, just a bit of some crazy EQ. I think I pulled this from another project, so that looks familiar from somewhere else, but it's not typically something I'm doing. But yeah, definitely getting rid of those two frequencies there on the think break are often like those harsher frequencies. And then yeah, I think the other like more characteristic part of the drums is these two layers, which are kind of adding like that sort of more like textural sound. Yeah, they're quite heavily, they're sidechained quite heavily to the kick and snare, and I'm also using this transient shaper here to bring down the attack on this one particularly. If I turn that off, it gets rid of the attack, those the like, and makes it more like so it's kind of like made it a bit more of a textural sound, which yeah, without these two on the drums, bring them in. I mean, it's doing a lot, but it's just that sort of like high-end sizzle, which is yeah, which kind of brings the drums to life there. You know, we've got some fills as well, like some one-shots with a bit of MIDI to create my own fill, and then a little sample here as well to layer it up with. And then yeah, the drums stay the same throughout the track, apart from this little switch up here where we bring in a little shaker. So yeah, just a simple way to kind of keep the drums interesting and keep them moving. And then on the drum bus, this is something that I was doing quite a lot of the time. I'm not doing it as much now, but creating like two sends, so kind of making a dry send and a slam send. So in this slam send here, I'm using a transient master to bring the attack all the way down, the sustain all the way up. And if we solo that, it's basically like a parallel compression sort of technique where you're kind of like really heavily compressing one sound and then mixing it into the original sound just to kind of like fill it out. I saw Slater do this technique and I took it and I've used it quite a few times, especially when the drums are feeling a little bit thin. So if you hear them without that, I bring it in. It's really subtle, but in the mix, it just kind of like fills it out. It just gives the drums a bit more presence. Then yeah, just kind of getting rid of some of that low end, a little bit of the high end, and that's just mixed in a little bit there to kind of give it that extra beef. We've got a little bit of clipping going on. There's some limiting going on. I don't tend to limit my drums, but apparently in this project I did. And then here we just got some automation, which is just being automated towards the end of this phrase here. Just to help with that transition. All right, moving down to the bass. This is the bass here. So the bass is mega simple. It is a current patch, which I can't show you because I'm currently not subscribed to current, but at the time I was. And yeah, it's just playing an E, playing an F, and then there's an F sharp. Yeah, this one I kind of did a little bit more by ear for like the bass notes and stuff. Obviously with the stab playing one like note and then having the frequency shifter like changing it around and the ring mod doing some bits to it. I just kind of did what just felt right in the track. And yeah, I mean, the sound on itself, it's quite a simple sound. It's kind of like almost like two sine waves sort of, you know, a bit of fine tune off on each other, kind of creating that wobble effect with that attack at the front, you know, sound. And then at the end of the phrase, little wobble sound, which I can actually show you because it's just in Serum here. It's just 2 sine waves with the fine 100 on one of them, and a little bit of distortion just to crunch it up, but kind of nice to just have that at the end of phrase. And yeah, a couple of like one-shot elements here from Pono and Bryson. Just kind of feel really nice in the context of the track, like where they hit. Boom, boom, quite like that. And then, yeah, this noise layer. This isn't something that I do anymore, but this is what I was doing at the time to create that like fizz on top. So it's just the same bass patch, just with all the high end taken out there. A noise sample, so just a noise sample, and it's been pushed into a group with saturating it together, getting rid of the low end again, just so it's just the high end of it. Even more so apparently with Pro Q. Some gem mod here, just giving it some width, and then a bit of side chain. And yeah, basically it's just more for the way it sits in the mix. So this is it all together without the noise layer. So it's just nice. It kind of creates that like fizzy top. And then yeah, on the next 16, I've got this nice big fat foghorn sound, which is just a Serum patch here. It's from a foghorn pack. I can't remember where it's from. A little bit of rift on there, which is nice. Oh, 2 riffs actually. So yeah, it's just like crunching it up. And then we got another sound here. Yeah, to me that kind of like is foghorny, but could be like a dinosaur screeching. You know, this is again from that Rave Hits pack, and I've just I've actually stretched it, time stretched it there, and yeah, I mean, if we find the original here, so yeah, practically the same sound but stretched out. It kind of has a little bit more of a foghorny sort of sound to it. Yeah, so that's kind of the bass, to be honest. From there, we've got, you know, the usual effects, lots of effects here, helping with the build up, helping with the release, with the white noise. I won't go too into depth with all that because there's quite a lot going on here, but essentially it's all just layers and layers of rises and like down sweeps, all of which are kind of like used at the end of, I think, almost every 8 bars, I think, here. Yeah, just to kind of create like the sweeps and crashes back down, just to keep it kind of like rising and falling. I mean, without any of that in the build and drop.
Hunting for dinosaurs. Hunting for dinosaurs.
It's the sort of thing that you could add just, you know, tons and tons of, and I do, you know, like until it feels like it's fitting correctly. Within that, I've also got like the sort of soundscapes of the jungle and the tape sounds, which are all kind of like creating the ambience and atmosphere at the beginning of the track. It was really important for me actually for the track to start kind of almost not feeling like a drum and bass tune at all, just feeling like a little bit of like a soundscape and atmosphere. So that then when there was this switch,
The most dramatic animals the world has ever known.
now it starts to feel like, oh, okay, where are we going with this? You know, with that sort of like muted stab sound, the noises of the dinosaurs. But at the beginning, I wanted it to just feel like you were listening to like a soundscape from a DVD. Moving on to like the sort of more dinosaur sounds and the growls here. Yeah, Splice delivered on some dinosaur noises. I've got some tiger growls in there as well. And actually up here, I've got a melodic elephant scream. But all of these are kind of just like searched around to find sounds that would now fit into that sort of dinosaur sort of sound. And yeah, some of those for like growls. I mean, dinosaur growl didn't come up, but a tiger growl kind of sits in the same world. And these all have just like a Valhalla reverb on them. Some of them are low pass, just to give it that sort of like more muted sound, because I didn't want it to be, I think this is quite liked it like muted, like it's in the background. But yeah, the growls are just sort of peppered in on the build up, a little bit on the drop, but kind of as and when they kind of fit. And then we move down to some of the percussion here. Again, this is just to build the sort of realism of you're watching the DVD, like this timpani roll here in context.
Dinosaurs walked.
It felt to me a bit like that's what you would hear in like one of these VHSs. And then, we got some more here. This is just me literally getting them off of Splice. There's not even any processing on most of them there, but it's all just to create that tension in the track. So yeah, that's kind of the gist of the track. The only other thing to really note is it's probably one of the few tracks that I have decided to like really switch up the second drop. A lot of the times it's so easy to just copy paste, especially when you're happy with what the first drop is like. But I wanted this to just have a slightly different feel, just to keep it interesting. And the way I did that actually was just by taking all of the stabs here and shifting them over by just one beat. I think it's one beat. Is that a beat? I think so. And the idea being that it now kind of feels like it's pushing. So I'll play it for you just right now.
Intelligence.
So it's got a slightly different feel to it, but it's obviously the exact same sound. I would have just copy pasted that, and it's probably got the exact same automation and everything, but just shifting it that one beat's kind of made it felt like it was being pushed. You've also got that slightly different bass sound here. It's all kind of like he says, the most feared of weapon, intelligence. And there's something about the sounds, they sound a little bit more like techie, somewhat intelligent, and just kind of playing on the vocal there as well. These are just like one-shot foghorn with some rift on them. So the rift's doing a lot there. And again, like this one, I'm just stretching, reversing. But with the rift, it kind of like, you kind of get away with like that stretch sound. So there's a breakdown of my track Dinosaur Hunters. I hope it was somewhat interesting, maybe even useful. I don't know. I can't say I'm going to make many more tracks about dinosaurs, but I've done it now. You can now listen to Dinosaur Hunters on Artificial Music. You can stream it in all usual places. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you again soon.